Cold and grateful for those who are gathering on this morning. We're welcoming as everyone and those who are with us online. Welcome Ed for adult education. Marianne Beardall is going to be sharing her faith journey as part of our faith journey series. Marianne is an elder at Potomac Presbyterian Church, though not currently serving on the session. She's active on the Christian Education Committee. And one of the things she does behind the scenes, Marianne's a very active behind the scenes person, is create the curriculum that Miss Angela and Miss Michelle use every Sunday in the one room classroom. And then also she helps to facilitate the women's retreat for us, has for the last several years. And this year, the women's retreat is going to be held. She's opening up her home to the women of the church to gather at her home on April 13 for a day retreat. So we're still sort of pulling together what that might look like, but we'll probably bring in a speaker and have time for sharing and listening and being in community as women of the church at Marianne's home. And she rings in the bell choir under the direction of Sam Gray. And she participates in the Faith, Hope, and Lunch women's book group. And what I love a lot about Marianne, but what I love about Marianne is she's a child of the church. And she'll talk more about what that means. I call her a child of the church as she shares her story. So let's begin with a word of prayer, and then I'll turn it over to Marianne. Good and gracious God, as we gather on this Lord's Day, we're so thankful that we can gather in this way, in person and on Zoom. We're so thankful for your spirit that stirs among us. I pray, Lord, that as we learn more about our sister Marianne, that you would open us to recognize how you are at work in our lives and how you call us into relationship with one another and with this community. Send your spirit now, we pray in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you all for coming. Pastor Emily had asked a couple of months ago if I would do this, and I kind of sat there and laughed, to be honest, because I thought, well, what would be so exciting about my story? So thank you for coming to listen to myself talk about myself. But to give a little background on who I am, I was born Marianne Nicole Ewaldson, a good Danish name, to my parents, Ford and Jerry, and I have an older brother. We are just under a year apart, so we were always told we were Irish twins, which we do look exactly alike. My parents both have their masters in sacred music from Wittenberg University, and that's where they met, and then began their journey from, my mom was from Syracuse, New York, began their journey down the East Coast to find jobs in the early 70s in the church. So I basically was raised in the church. I would spend most of my days with my dad, either listening to him practice the organ while I ran around, helping to set the altar, things like that. But my childhood was children's choir, first communion classes, youth group. I, of course, did confirmation, sat on our church council as a youth representative. Just a lot of time in the church. And then with my parents both having a musical background, my brother and I were expected to have the same skill set, or attempt to have the same skill set. So we both played the piano, I played the violin, and then I did do the bells as a youth in our church. So it was interesting to say the least. But after I left home, I kind of left music behind, but now that at the age that I am now, I'm trying to reteach myself how to read the music and things like that. But so that's kind of how my childhood was. So I did dig up that lovely picture of being confirmed. And then Matt and I were married in my home church in High Point, by the pastor that baptized me. So I kind of came full circle. And I put my grandmother's verse that she would often share with my brother and I, from Matthew 22, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. So that was kind of really reared into my upbringing. Both of my parents were raised in the Lutheran Church, which I think nowadays is kind of strange to find the match. My husband was as well. My dad is from Savannah, Georgia, and my mom is from Syracuse. Thankfully, our summers were spent splitting time in both places. So the church on the bottom is the Lutheran Church of the Ascension in Savannah. That is the church my dad grew up in, and then I would spend summers or the month of June going to church there with all of my cousins in Vacation Bible School. And my dad would be the guest organist sometimes or play with family on the piano. And then the rest of my summers were spent in upstate New York. And that's the church on top. That was the one my mom grew up in, which is Luther Memorial. My grandfather was raised in a German Catholic church, and my grandmother would not marry him until he left the Catholic Church. So he became very active with the Lutheran Church there and was a deacon. So there again, I spent a lot of time with him on a Saturday, setting the altar for Sunday church and stuff like that. The one thing I do remember about that church was after service on Sundays, you would go downstairs and greet the greeters and then make a mad dash for the donut table. That's my favorite memory of
Not much has changed.
Not much has changed. Yeah, with both families being very grounded in the Lutheran faith, that is how I was raised.
Did your mom play the organ as well? Was she an organist?
She was more piano.
She played piano.
Yep. And then outside of church, they both taught piano. So our house was like a revolving door of kids coming in. And then I would never practice, so they sent me out to somebody else to take lessons. Yeah, that wasn't so nice. But Matt and I were married in '99 and then joined Emmanuel Lutheran here in Bethesda on Seven Locks. And all 4 kids were baptized there. And shortly after Matthew was born, I was asked if I would take the position of Christian Ed director for them. So I did that for about 5 years. And then I guess around 2015 is when there were some changes going on in the church there. And I casually began looking around. And then we knew different families here. So it was they were very welcoming, and we were happy to have found PPC. And that was just before Matthew took confirmation. So Matthew, Caroline, and Reagan was a COVID confirmand. And Carson is in confirmation now. So fingers crossed he'll be confirmed in May. A little background on the Lutheran faith. This was probably reared into me with the Luther's catechism. with the 10 Commandments, the Apostles' Creed, memorizing the Nicene Creed, the Lord's Prayer, and really diving into the meaning. And we had to get in front of the church and recite everything. So that was interesting, and give our take on the meetings. But it was a good foundation, I think. And I think that's what I look for now. I would say I'm a very traditional person when it comes to worship service. So I do still like to recite these.
What was the age that you were at when you had to memorize that and recite in the church? I'm just curious.
I want to say it was 8th or 9th grade. And then we had to go off. Part of confirmation was summer camp, and it was 2 weeks of studying the book of John. I still have my Bible, everything marked up. Notes and things like that. We delved into the book of John as part of confirmation. So that was probably what, 30 plus years ago. So now I'm
Was it the ELCA or
Mhm.
Missouri Synod?
ELCA. Now as an adult, I think I find myself wanting to dig deeper. And I think this has come up before, where you have your questions, you think you've got that answered, and then it just kind of snowballs into more questions. So I think that's kind of the phase I'm in right now, is kind of trying to dig a little deeper. As Pastor Emily said, I am part of Faith, Hope, and Lunch. Some of the things that I have done in the past year or two, I try and sit early in the morning for 10 to 15 minutes with either a devotion or a guided practice. So one that I'm looking forward to starting is a 30-day guided reading of the Gospels. So hopefully starting that in February. Couple things that I did last year that I think kind of did the snowball effect of asking more questions. I participated with a friend in an Ignatian retreat, the Finding Christ in the World. And it was a 12-week, somewhat difficult at times to stay focused. We each did it about 15 minutes a day, and we kind of held each other accountable. And it was a time to teach yourself how to sit and reflect. And each day for the 1 week was a Bible verse, and you sat with that Bible verse and you repeated it over and over all week long. I don't know if you've ever done anything like this, but it was interesting in the beginning. About halfway through, we were both struggling, but we decided to keep going, and we did finish it. You know, a lot of questions to reflect on different Bible verses. It's very interesting. So if you ever wanted to do kind of a deep dive into the Ignatian practice and the examine, I believe that's what it comes down to. My takeaway from this were the 5 kind of simple bullet points, which looking at it now is kind of what I do on a day-to-day basis anyway. Thanking God for all that is good, asking for insight and light. Look at yourself and what you did and how that made you feel and think. Offer the good to the Lord and beg his forgiveness for the not good, and see what you will do tomorrow. And thank God for the good in your life. So I think those are kind of 5 kind of grounding statements to take on each day. One of the other things that I did with this same friend was a day at the Bon Secours Retreat Center, and we did a day of contemplative writing. And that, again, was a time where I had to train myself to sit in silence. And we had to break into different times during the day where we were left to wander. And we came back at the end of the day, and some people wrote some very deep thoughts. And we had to make a list of what we were going to give ourselves permission to do. And the three main things that I took away from that was to give myself permission to let go, give myself permission to see where God is leading me, and give myself permission to dream. So those were kind of my three takeaways from that day. And what is to come in 2024 for me? I have joined the bell choir, which I am relearning how to read music. Thanks to Linda. So we'll see how that goes. I am taking this a step further and participating in a pilgrimage in August and walking the path of Saint Ignatius in Spain. And my girlfriend and I didn't want one of the frou-frou pilgrimages where you're driven to a spot, you look around, stay in a nice hotel, even though that sounds nice now. Because we're a little worried about the heat, but we are going to give this a try and spend 7 days walking from Loyola all the way down to Barcelona, and stopping in those villages along the way. But there will be some rides, thankfully, because it is a long distance.
For those who can't read it, you're stopping in Pamplona.
We'll start in Loyola, Pamplona, Manresa, Montserrat, and then end in Barcelona. So come August, I will ask for your prayers that I may have a good pair of walking shoes.
Marianne, is it just the two of you or is it a group?
It's a small group, I believe, of 12. And it's through the Jesuits and organization in Scotland put it together. So we're excited. I think it'll be a good time to learn and have time to reflect and kind of see how the whole education and missionary work of him began. Gosh, back in the 1400s. So yeah, I'm excited. We'll see how that goes. The other thing I was kind of blessed to do this past year was take a trip to Italy. I only knew one other person on that trip. And that was also a time of kind of self-reflection, reigniting some gifts or talents that we thought, we kind of tucked away for a while. And that's when I kind of relearned painting. And walking around small villages and sitting cathedrals and taking pictures of things that caught my eye and then going back and painting them. But the one lady that was with me, she had mentioned this statement: the key to having a creative practice is just that, practice. Practice makes progress, not perfection. So she's always reminding me that we all have gifts, whether it's music, writing, art, and then just practicing it. So I thought if anyone was interested, that was my little craft this morning, was to kind of see if you would do watercolors. That's what I've been dabbling with. But before we do that, the last little thing that I came across, that I kind of sat with the other day. I might have to move. Can we move Ed?
Words. Sorry.
I wanted to do.
Outside.
Yeah.
No.
Exactly. He said it's gonna be cold down there. I thought that we could, this is something I read over and over, and I thought I would share it with everybody, that what if even a part of you dared to believe every little thing is going to be fine because God is working good through every little thing? What if you dared to shift your perspective to see that maybe what's unfolding under all of the impossibles is all kinds of unexpected gifts? What if you dared to really look and see when your Father's hand is not readily apparent to you, it's only because he's readying gifts for you? So this is something to remind yourself of. But, did anybody have any questions? I know there's not much to.
No, Marianne, that's been, I mean, just thank you so much for sharing the richness of your journey. And I know it's not easy. You're vulnerable when you do that, sharing bits of yourself with others. What struck me is the really strong foundation that your parents laid for you as a child, as a youth, and you weren't necessarily 100% receptive. I mean, as a child isn't always 100% receptive.
Right.
But it sounds like the way that you're talking about you're revisiting a lot of that foundation now and wanting to sort of unpack it a little bit more, some of those things. And that's such a beautiful example that you're showing to us of sort of opening us to, at least me, thinking about, yeah, that foundation was such a gift. Thinking of this quote, these little gifts from our Father, or literal Father and Lord. So what I'm hearing is that desire to go dig a little deeper, some of those gifts that you were given. It's a gift to me that I've heard it.
Yeah, I think my both sets of grandparents were very important. I would say my Syracuse grandparents were probably more, I was very close with them. And they were a vital part in my upbringing in the church. And we have 3 of the kids in their Bibles. My grandmother went and marked, so they have highlighted all of her favorite Bible verses. So they've, thankfully, they were blessed to have great grandparents for a while.
They're no longer living.
No, my Syracuse grandmother passed away 3 years ago. The same year, but my in-laws did, and she was the last one. And then my father-in-law was Catholic, so he would go to mass on Saturday, and Matt and his siblings would go to Grace Lutheran downtown with their mom on Sunday. So it was interesting how both of our families were, you know, Catholic and Lutheran. So I thought we used to joke about that when we met, that it was funny that we kind of connected in that way as well. So that's kind of my faith.
Yeah, I thank you so much for your sharing. And I guess my question particularly stimulated, and I think I know what the answer is, but I just wanted to ask you, this last quote that you left with, that it sounds, and this is sort of my question, that you feel you've had blessings in your life, for sure, but also it sounds like, and this is again my question, do you feel that God has specifically impacted events in your life in any way? I mean, I'm reading a little bit into.
I think so. I
Yeah.
think so. And I think more recently I'm more aware that what's happening is God's path for me. I think I've always said that I think I was put here to be a mother first. And I was blessed to be at home and raise all four with the little threat from my grandfather to my husband that she would stay home and raise them. That would sit in the back of Matt's mind. So we made it work. But I think that was my first gift and blessed to have that role. But I think now these other things, it seems to be in the last year or two, are falling into place for me to continue to learn and explore. Yeah.
So there's a
we'll
path
see what's next.
that you are following that
Yeah.
God is pulling you into, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out why. I don't know why. I guess that's
That's wonderful.
Marianne, you mentioned the music, so obviously you were raised with
a lot of
a
music.
lot of music.
Mhm.
But then you talked about going and starting the painting and revisiting painting. So did you do a lot of art when you were younger?
I did. It was funny because I pulled out the one bucket my mom sent me with a lot of my stuff in it and found all of these art awards, things that I was a dancer for probably, I think at 13 years I danced, had the music, a lot of odd and end little activities, but I've honestly forgotten how active I was with the arts, musical theater, things like that. Mhm.
Marianne, thank you so much. This
You're
is just,
welcome.
so comforting in a way to hear as well. With the pilgrimage, what inspired you? I know pilgrimages used to be within the purview of the Catholic faith,
Mhm.
and I know more and more individuals from different faith traditions are now going on pilgrimages. But what was it that enticed or inspired you to consider that journey?
Well, I have to say my friend Anna, who was roommates with Susan Fearless in college, and Anna and I met at Emmanuel with babies, and so I did not know there was a connection until I came here. So I think the two of us probably over the last 5 or 6 years have really tried to do this deep dive into how this all began, and who created these opportunities. And I think we just want to continue to learn about the people that started to spread the missionary work of and be a follower of Jesus. And we'll see. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting. I don't think it'll be easy, but it wasn't easy for them. So I guess I can't complain that I'll have a bed to
Well, they
sleep
say we
in.
learn more from the things that aren't easy than from the things that are. There's a lot.
Yeah.
Marianne, let me ask you about, you mentioned a writing, either like a course or an element that you,
Mhm.
what was the most challenging thing about that? Let me preface that by saying, I think it was Ernest Hemingway who said, the most terrifying thing in this world is a blank sheet of paper.
Yeah, I would agree. Because the lady leading the retreat kind of left us with a blank piece of paper. And I don't know, I think at the time, I was having trouble putting thought to paper, knowing I was going to have to share it. So I guess being vulnerable. but I honestly, after practicing sitting there in silence, we would go outside, so it was a beautiful setting. And just trying to process why I was there, and yeah, it became easier as the day went on, but it was definitely hard to share those first little blurbs of inner thoughts.
Marianne, I can only echo, the richness of your youth, et cetera. But my particular question is tangential.
Yeah.
How has this strong faith in your practice impacted your family? What's that influence or interaction, good, bad, or indifferent?
Gosh, I think the kids, I think, appreciate the foundation that I was given, and then to try to give to them. I think two of them, I would say, are in that questioning phase. And thankfully I have one that has left home and is exploring church on her own, which makes me a proud mother. 1 out of 4 might get it. And then I think they see, my dad is still the organist at the church, so we're going on, or he started at my home church and left for a couple years and then went back. So in this second round, we're at over 40 years.
In High Point?
In High Point, and I don't think he's stopping anytime soon. So I think they see what he has given up for his career, because we always had to be home at Christmas. And then even when my children were young, in order to see my parents, we were doing road trips home to see them at Christmas, because we could not leave for Christmas Eve. But so it was a lot of give and take. But
I see a number of confirmation mentors in the room, and we're meeting our confirmands today. This question might be a bit of a stretch, but any advice for mentors to give to confirmands and their parents to keep them engaged with thinking about the church after
Beyond.
confirmation is all over and done?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that, because Carson will be doing his today, and he said, do I have to talk about the Bible at lunch? Because after last week's class, he said it's a lot. He's like, I can't remember all the names. So I think it's overwhelming. And I think maybe that's why some of them get discouraged, because it is a lot of information. I don't know. I think it comes down to just reminding them that we are all here together and as a community, and a safe place, and to be able to come and worship together is important.
That quote too from your grandmother is really important. Love the Matthew quote, love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind.
Well, one about creative endeavors is good too.
Right,
We're practicing our faith.
right.
We may not be perfect, but we're practicing.
Right.
We'll make progress.
And I think letting them know that we still have questions, that we're still learning. I think from my kids' perspective, I think they thought that they had to know the answers to everything and understand it all. And I think that's kind of where they got a little deterred.
We're all a work in progress.
Yep.
God's not done with us yet,
Yep,
and not all of us end up, the same,
right,
right?
Right.
We're we're each gonna grow in our own way.
right. And I think saying that to them is important.
Well, making sure they know maybe that it's not, what they learn in confirmation is not, they don't each know everything, right? It's an introduction in some respect. We're giving you lots of information, and then, like you're still trying to go to classes and do what you can to figure it all out.
Yeah.
I was thinking about you talked about your grandmother highlighting her favorite Bible verses in their Bible. I can't remember if our church is still doing this or has stopped doing it, but at one point we had our kids go through, it was like, they received their Bibles, but they went through like a little program before they received their Bibles in church. It was like getting to know the different parts of the church service. I don't know if we still do that or not, but I know that when the kids were fourth grade Bibles, right?
Third grade Bible.
Third grade Bibles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, they went through something before they then received their third grade Bible, but I remember when they received their
Prep for
third grade.
worship kind of a thing.
Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
remember what it was called, but I remember, and I think only for two of the kids, not Juliet maybe, but the church had given the parents bookmarks. And we were able to give them to the different grandparents or special people in their lives to write their favorite Bible verse. And so I know at least my older two kids have those bookmarks in their Bibles.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Matthew
And-
has in his third grade Bible, because I looked back, he had to ask all the important people
People to do that.
to
Yeah.
share their Bible verses and
But I know they cherish that, and obviously you cherish what your
Mhm.
grandmother did, so
Mhm.
it's maybe a takeaway to if your church isn't doing that still, maybe we find a way to put that back in.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be a family member either.
Right, any special people.
Marianne, I forgot, who wrote the words on this slide?
So this was one that I came across, a lady, I don't know if you've heard of Ann Voskamp. She's a Christian, she's a Christian author. But,
I know choir people have to go.
yeah. So, yeah.
Okay. All right, that we see you on the Zoom, folks. Thank you for being with us, just checking in. Yeah. Any Zoom questions? No. Stan, you're muted.
Yes, I'm coming back. I had a question about the retreats. Was the retreats that you went on, was it all at a similar location, or was part of it virtual, or how were you able to get that many people together?
The Ignatian retreat?
Yes,
maybe?
the Ignatian.
The Nation Worship, that was something I did at home on my own. So this was a self-guided retreat.
Okay.
And then the writing retreat. was
And then
at
the writing retreat was a one day that my friend and I had found, just something different to try.
And then the Spain retreat.
Is something we found on our own as well. Yep. So if you want to come.
Well, were there other people doing it at the same time, or was it something you pick up and just fit into your own schedule?
This 12-week one we fit into our own schedule. I think this we bought through Boston College. And they had it ready for last summer. So I think whoever did it, we were probably all roughly doing it at the same time, but they did recommend, if you had a church community, but I think that would be, a group that you could check in with every couple weeks to come together and share your thoughts. So that probably would have been helpful since we did struggle halfway through. Because we kept saying was getting really repetitive,
Mhm, mhm,
but that's the point.
mhm.
Mhm.
Well, I envy what you had done. It sounds very aggressive to be able to pull that together.
It was.
And then the way you were able to pull out the nuggets from it. So the daily examine is, you had those 5 points for your daily examine or what you learned from it. But often with the daily examine, you have, what was the best thing about the day and what was the worst thing about the day. You can boil it down to that. And you boiled it, that 25-week or however many week program
Mhm.
to those 5 points, which was
Mhm.
helpful.
I love it. Yes.
I have a quick question from the back row here. This is really one that we all are challenged with. How do you reconcile the evil in the world using your faith, particularly to young people? How do you say that a loving, giving God, this is a question we all ask
Mhm.
ourselves, but always, permits the evil in man?
Mhm. Mhm.
And and particularly when children bring that up, and then they sometimes very specific, why did somebody break a leg or why someone's sick, but in a broader spectrum, how do you face that challenge of reconciling the evil in the world with your faith?
I don't know if I have an answer. I think I struggle with that, and I know for sure my children have, with, death and evil and war and, that's a deep thought of the day. Yeah, it's.
Well, I don't,
So-
that's not
I think we
permitted.
need.
I just-
You're not gonna. How would you answer?
I would say, so God is love.
Right.
God is love. So evil is the absence of God. So but it's been around from the beginning, as we know in Genesis. It's been around, but it doesn't, when we convey our faith, these other questions about how do you show your family or your children or whomever, who God is, ultimately the expression of who God is love. And so God has the capability to overcome anything with that love. It's not for us to determine how that happens, but our job as Christians is to convey that message that God is love in our actions, in our words, in the way we conduct ourselves. And that will ultimately, we know, will overcome the evil that's in the world. We don't know when or how, but it will.
It's gonna take time. I know.
Our time is not God's time, but it will.
Doesn't it always also
Daniel.
have to do with free will?
Yeah, there's a,
Yeah, I just want to agree with the pastor saying that God is love, and from him, he released his only son he had in heaven before the world began. When he saw the darkness that was in the world, he released him to come, knowing very well that his ending will be on the cross. Nonetheless, he released him. So that's a lot of love. And we can tell them that, look at God, the love that he had, the only child he had. It was a big risk. But thank God that he fulfilled, that Jesus fulfilled the will of his Father. And we have to take comfort in that whatever we see around, God is still God, and he is love. Thank you.
I mean, one other thing I would just add to what Emily said is the pastor I grew up with in a congregational church in Massachusetts was asked that question, your question. In fact, somebody came up to this pastor because this pastor had a lot of tragedy in his life. He lost one child, another child to cancer. And there's nothing worse than having a child, that's like the most devastating that you can have. And people come up to him and say, you don't expect, somebody who has a strong faith, particularly a pastor, you don't expect bad things are gonna happen to that person, right? Because the idea, like, well, even if I'm doing everything right, I'm gonna have some trouble, but not the tragedies. And so this person came up and said, I feel so bad. Why is this happening? And asked that question. His response was exactly like Emily's, because the person was saying, why did God cause this to happen? Is sort of the leading question to a person like you. And his answer was exactly what Emily said. It's not that God is controlling or in control, although he's omnipotent and can do anything, but the fact that being love, and then he went into a description of, love is things happen to us in life and we can't get around it. And he said, one of the things he said, which complements what Emily said, he said, yes, what if God is just love? Okay. And he said, love doesn't control. It never does in a relationship. It's not something that it's just, that's what he went down and talked about. Exactly what Emily said. So I remember that when she kind of responded.
But one's faith is a personal approach to this problem.
Yeah, that's
Not
true.
mine's, not yours. And
Right, that's true.
so probably, Marianne, you've had a great faith foundation. There may be some aspects of this question that are particular, give you strength that maybe I wouldn't see in my faith, which is okay. And that's the kind of, is there any insight that you have that helps you reconcile the drama of evil in the world? That was kind of the question. No, it's very personal, so you don't have to, you can put in writing that.
When you walk across Spain.
Have an email.
But to add to that, so that God is love, and so it is up to us as people of faith to project that love.
That's right.
And part of the sort of complexity of that is finding gifts like painting or praying, arts, music that sort of lift and project. So I think that's part of what we're attracted to in painting, in music, is that it reinforces and extends that quality of love that we want to broaden to our family, our church, and our world.
And that gets at Greg's question. So how do you model that? How do you live that out? Do you give it lip service, or do you live it? Do you actively pursue it so that when the kids are around, they see you engaged in these gifts? That's part of it too,
But I think
modeling
it
it.
is hard to answer that. Why is there so much evil?
Oh, very good.
What's that, Marianne?
I said it is hard to answer that.
Yeah. There's no answer.
Why? Yeah.
I think one of the hardest elements is forgiveness, the whole concept of forgiveness, to answer your question. I remember a number of years ago, there were a number of Amish people who were killed by somebody in Pennsylvania. And I think what struck me is the group that he came, that the person was killed from, went to the prison and met with this man and prayed for him. Wow. That's above and beyond, I think, at least what I could do, but it certainly gave me some encouragement to think about forgiveness. Not the easy forgiveness. Oh, spilled something on it.
Right.
No, you murdered 5 people in the group who were coming to pray for you. So
Just to follow on that, Fernando's maybe, what, Rob said, I find that, yes, God is love. And I think Nancy mentioned something about free will, that we come in this world and we are given that liberty to love God, because he doesn't control us. God is love, and he says, well, you're free to love me. You're free to choose to love me. And if you love me, this is, what will, as Marianne has expressed, this is the result, and we keep touching others with that love. The example that you've given, there was another one in South Africa. There was someone called Dube. He came from a family of a singer, and one day thieves came into the house. They killed the father, they killed his young brother, and so on. The mother went to the prison and adopted
Oh my gosh.
the killer as her own son. She said, I forgive you, and I would like to extend forgiveness to you. Would you become my son to take the place of the one that you killed?
Oh, wow.
And up to now, that boy is now a pastor in the church because of the love that this lady decided to extend. But I think another aspect is this world is limited. I mean, we are not mortal, but we know that there's a world that's coming, eternity, where God says there'll be no dying, no crying, no evil. We'll be separated from evil completely and totally. And that's the gift, the free gift that Christ is offering to all of us, to say, here you are. This world was handed over to the devil with all his evil, and that's what he is manifesting, as the Bible says, that he is the father of lies, he's the father of all evil, and so on. But there's a better world coming because of what Adam and Eve did in the Garden of Eden. So it's like they handed over the entitlement to him, and he's coming with all sorts of havoc. But then Christ says, if you choose me, there's a day of reckoning. There's a day when all this will pass, and we're going to live together in eternity in a better world. So I think that's what also challenges my faith, to say there's a day that's coming when all this evil will go, because I'll live with Christ in eternity. So that's what encourages me on a daily basis, and that's what says, show love, demonstrate it, let others know that there's an alternative to the evil that is in the world. I don't know whether I've hardly answered the question.
That's
but that's
very
what
well said. Oh,
Yes.
So Marianne, do we have time for your activity, do you think? Or we don't have time for the activity? You want to tell us what the activity was going to be that you have?
So I had picked 3 Bible verses. And you're more than welcome to take those with
Right,
you.
maybe we
So,
can.
When I am afraid, I put my trust in you. And each one's different because I went and hand sketched a little bird that as an outline of something to paint. This one, all things are possible with God, and those are blank. And then, rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. And it was more or less just an activity to just put your gifts to paper, and
We could take them home and
Are we we're to write, or you brought paints, or how did that,
So
how was that?
this is watercolor paper.
Okay,
If you have paint at home, watercolor is very forgiving. I have come to learn, and it's fun just to sit, even if you had 10, 15 minutes and dabble and try and create something.
did you sketch something on the other one as well? You said there was
Some have flowers, butterfly. I mean, you could do.
and those are
anything.
your hand sketches.
Yeah.
I'm always very impressed with artists.
Yeah.
I'm not gifted in that way, and I know many of you are, so thank you for sharing that.
And the blank is just freestyle. So, and in Italy, we had little travel watercolor booklets and then travel art pens that we fill with water. And then we had travel art paints. So I found time to sit, and whether it was the cross in the church or the beautiful door out front with the door knocker. So you can always put watercolor down and let it dry and then sketch on top of it, whatever you want your piece to be. So I'm learning. It's fun.
And where do you get watercolor?
Michael?
You just
Yeah,
get paints?
yeah.
Okay, yep,
Yeah,
yep.
you can pick up the little kid, you can get the little kids palette. Okay. But it's fun. It's been fun. For colored pencils, yeah, you can do anything. So yeah, but thank you for letting me talk about myself.
In the August
Uh-huh.
tree, sorry, the August tree, it's for specific people?
It was open to anybody, and then they, take about a dozen people that would like to walk this pilgrimage. So we'll see how it goes. So I think each morning starts, if you want to participate in mass, you can. And then, you go from there.
So that's August, so maybe in September we'll get a follow-up.
Yeah.
Thank you so
I
much.
come back alive.
Not only a follow-up, but a article.
Okay, I'll put my thoughts to paper and I'll draw pictures with it.
I want to follow your blog.
So can
Sure,
we take
if
one
you
of
want
those?
to take it, feel free.
And was there a
Fun.
system to which verses you selected, or those were?
No, if you want, yeah, no, it was just options.
Yeah.
Next
Um,
week, Sam Gray is coming back to lead us in another session on singing. I don't know what the focus is, but he's gonna be leading us next week.
I think that was him related, wasn't it?
Hymn related, maybe, is that what he said? Hymn, on hymn, hymnody, the great hymns of the church, maybe even.
Yeah.
All right. Good to see you, Ed and Stan and Susan. Take good care.
Yeah.
I think the day used to take credit for you.